I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
The night beckons while you dream. A life never lives in peace. As you stand upon the edge, woven by a single thread, and fate may fall down upon you, while the devil is knocking right at your door.
Welcome aboard, everyone.
What exactly is Alphabox, and why do our traders absolutely love it?
Michael Oates room. Are you ready indeed? Welcome aboard. Don't forget, trading is risky. Make sure you understand all of that. But this might also be new. I've got new pedals. Right, so pressing the pedal. Good morning, Alejandro. Give me a shout out to everybody. Know where everybody's coming from. Type in what country, state you're in. Always curious where everybody. Oh, look at that. Twitch and OBS. What? And easier. Better. I am going to turn on both sides of Sigma equation here. I'm going to I'll just start out. And I'm drawing objects. Got uh-oh, mic is cutting out. Hold on. Okay, mic was all the way down at like 33% for some reason, probably because I was screaming at people on Discord here this morning for right reasons. Now, I've got a no list. One of those items is, have you yelled at anyone today? Well, yes, I've already been yelling at people, so, you know, I should really be setting and staying off of my trades here this morning. So I'm already personal self-evaluation. You need to have your own personal no list. Like, what are things that set into motion where you know that you should not be? Yeah, Mike was cutting in and out. Thank you. Is it better now? Yeah, so that was Discord tends to do that. It's got its auto microphone thing or whatever. Curtis, Eddie is calling me. If you get a moment, if you guys can get on a call yourselves and have a chat, fill him in on our chats that we had there this morning. And let's start making stuff happen. Would you? Thank you very much. All right, make sure you smash that like button here. Don't make me call your moms. Do not want that, I promise. All right, so let's see. I'm going to get used to these pedals. There we go. And I can do full back. Hopefully you guys will be able to see everything if I press that one. So there we go. We got some foot pedal action going. Should be able to flip you guys between screens without having to take my hands off the keys. Speaking of keys, we've got those new hotkeys going here. Let's see. There's the first amount of volume coming in here. Last one was a 10 continuation, 16.3. Let's see if 16.3 is enough to shift us. We have been traversing our way down here all the way to a P point. Prior high, prior close sitting together. So that is likely an important location later today. If not right now, quite frankly. We might be heading right back to that there at the Open. We are about 6 minutes from the U.S. Open. Let's turn on audio box there. And I like to sit on hands for the first 5 minutes of the session in general. And I'm going to thoroughly enjoy my coffee here for a few minutes. But before we do all of that, I'm going to give you guys a quick tour around if you are brand new with us. The direction filter is free. You can get this inside of our Discord channel chat on the left-hand side. You'll have this actively telling you currently what the 4 correlated instruments, NASDAQ, Dow, Russell, ES, NASDAQ, all those guys combined, whether their tide is rising or falling. The runner plays need to be in the direction of the direction filter, in my opinion. If you are going to go against this, meaning... So right now, we're currently strong sell. Well, now it just went to moderate sell as we're pushing up here. So moderate sell, that means that my runner plays are going to be in this direction. If I'm going against it, target one for us. Some people might consider that scalp. Really kind of up to you. Everybody's got different definitions of scalp. I call it grabbing bags. 10, 15, 20 ticks at a time. 5 minutes till the U.S. Open here. Let's get, currently this week, 37R for the NASDAQ on the optimized range. Sitting right here. Last touch here, we had a 7.9 back here. I need to get a measurement for that one. I'm going to zoom back out here. And let's get a cross-to-cross measurement. Ooh, that means we still have more room there, so that's good news. F8, 8 to an 8 gives us a gold line down here at 19,883.
Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Zach Barney, co-founder and CEO at Mobley. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you, Zach. Let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about your background.
I am a risk taker by nature. So Yeah, I grew up in Utah primarily, and right out of school, I had a couple of physical setbacks with some knee injuries and a couple of other things while simultaneously getting married. So I finished school and needed a job really quick. I just fell into a bootstrap startup helping run sales and fell in love with sales. So been doing that my whole career, primarily very early stage stuff, either as hire number one or at least sales hire number one. Take a bit of a detour from that a few years ago. Spent 3 years at a publicly traded company running their U.S. sales, and then 3 years in private equity as a drop-in sales operator for our portcos, and then ultimately started Mobly about a year and a half ago.
Wow, I love that. So yeah, so from, kind of bootstrap small companies up to huge public companies, the
Yeah.
PE, now running your own company. So love that background. So yeah, let's talk about Mobly. Tell us about the products and services that Mobly offers.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to understand that with my background as now a recovering VP of sales, I like to say you don't move up in sales leadership unless you are a data-driven person, unless you can look at, understand metrics and derive actions from those metrics to get the results that you want. And I found, especially as I grew up in my employers and worked for larger companies with bigger budgets, that we would be spending a lot of money in the field at conferences, events, on-site travel, and all of the discipline that I had built in my team just completely fell apart when they didn't have their laptops right in front of them. So field sales rep, going out and shaking hands and kissing babies, it is like pulling teeth to get them to log their activities and to update their pipeline. As a result, it's really hard to forecast off of them. It's really hard to replicate them. And if they leave the company, you lose their pipeline too. And then I found an even bigger pain around trade shows and events. It's just such an old, antiquated process that most companies deal with renting badge scanners if they're exhibiting at a trade show. And they have to learn a new system, train their team, scan badges, and then all they get is crappy registration data, very little info, lots of burner accounts and typos, and it doesn't integrate with anything. So as a result, there's just massive process of start to finish. That takes the average company 11 days before leads are back in the hands of a salesperson to follow up with. And I was just blown away by how antiquated that process is. So decided to fix it with Mobly. We're a universal lead capture, enrichment, and engagement application that our users can literally take anywhere, from sitting next to somebody on an airplane to a big giant event like Dreamforce and everything in between. You can scan any badge, any business card, or just type in the person's name and company. We enrich the data, push it to your CRM, and allow you to follow up from the app with that activity logging back to your CRM.
Wow, I love that. So really, so those sales reps who are in the field a lot, and just helping facilitate that process. So they still have that discipline, like you said, instead of up here in their head, and then they just leave or forget to put it in, and that could be a valuable lead. You're just making it easier for them in the field to get it back into your CRM system.
Correct. Yeah. At the PE firm that I worked at, I had a fantastic rep. He was one of the best salespeople I've ever worked with, did close to 200% of his number a few years ago. And I just remember thinking, I have no way to replicate this guy. Salesforce shows me a 90% win rate. And it's not that he was a bad egg. It's not like he wasn't a team player. He was just out in the field all the time. And that is a cumbersome process to put new contacts in, to update your forecast. So he wouldn't do anything until they asked for a contract, and almost every single one of them closed. It was great. We filled our number, but it didn't tell the accurate story. And that's just a big pain from a GTM leadership perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And tell me about your ideal customer profile. Who are you targeting with Mobly?
So right now, I mean, the product's still very early. We have some big visions. Right now, we are selling to event marketers primarily, sometimes demand gen and RevOps as well. And the big reason why is the average 100-person B2B company, they go to over 40 events every single year, and they already have budget set aside to pay for lead retrieval. They hate it, and they don't have long-term contracts. So helping them reposition that already existing budget that they have to spend over to something that they actually like using and can use consistently is a pretty big no-brainer for them. We tend, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
We tend to sell to companies that have at least 50 employees. We don't try to go too up market on true enterprise yet. We're getting our SOC 2 certification, but we don't like jumping through a lot of enterprise hoops yet. We're a small and nimble team, and we primarily sell to US and Canada based companies.
Okay. So 50 plus employees use Canada. And then as far as say the demand gen team or RevOps team, is the ROI there for these guys if just one person's on your application, or do you need a couple for it to make sense?
The bigger issue is less about the number of users and more about how many people their team is capturing. So I mean, there are so many ways to look at the ROI. Offsetting costs that's already there. Yes, that's one. I would argue that the biggest one is speed to lead. If we can help a company take their time from handshake to when a rep is able to follow up from 11 days and shrink that down to 11 minutes, then their win rate goes through the roof. So it's been a super easy sale, even for small teams. They might have 50 people and only 2 or 3 users. It still makes sense for them, because if we can help them with that speed to lead, win 1-2 extra deals a year, then our cost is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I'm not a marketer, but I love some of the
Sure.
lingo here. Speed to lead, 11 days to 11 minutes. Yeah, a lot to sell there. So, and is this a mobile app as well as website application then?
It's primarily mobile. The end
Okay.
users only use the mobile app. We're available on iOS and Android. And then from the admin side, there's a client portal where they can log in, create their event, create their users, attach them to set events, and then put in custom kind of survey questions that show up in the app for their users when they meet somebody new.
Okay. Yeah, great. Makes a ton of sense. So you're still pretty new. So founded in 2023?
Yeah, January of last year.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, and then we talked, so Utah background, is the company located in Utah?
We're in Lehi, Utah, literally like a stone's throw away from the neighborhood my co-founder and I grew up in. And that's now like the heart of all tech innovation in the state, which is it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, definitely a lot going on in Utah. And then what's your current team size?
So we've got just about a dozen people, a little bit higher than that. A couple of them are interns, part-time, and have a few more full-timers starting in the next few weeks.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. So great to have you interns. What role do the interns play?
So the way Mobley works, when I capture a lead, if I scan somebody's badge or business card at an event, what happens is we don't tie into the events API. Instead, we use optical character recognition to read the image on the badge, convert it to text, and then we serve as the data provider, going through several of our data partners to enrich and build that lead and verify it through like a data waterfall. The last step of that is a live human sees it and checks that the OCR is accurate, that if you manually entered it, you didn't have any misspellings and so forth. So they clean it up and ensure the quality is there. And simultaneously, they're training our models to get smarter and better on the optical character recognition. So those humans, that's a team of 5 analysts. We have 1 full-time, 4 part-time that are all finishing up degrees, in many cases, master's degrees in like information systems that really like getting into big data and model training.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And I know it's early in your journey, 2023.
Yeah.
So are you revenue generating or pre-revenue right now?
We are. No, we've got right around 40 customers right now. We got our first LOIs about a week after incorporating. We went to a little event on a whim and threw up a banner that said badge scanners suck, try Mobley, and beta coming soon or something like that. And yeah, we signed 4 LOIs then, got our first actual paying customers April of last year. So we're about a year into having revenue.
Okay, all right, that's great. And then currently, tell us a little bit about your early stage go-to-market motion. You mentioned going to events or trade shows, but how are you finding your prospects right now?
So definitely blended, but we just hired our first 2 sales reps in the middle of December. So we're 4 months in with them. Up until then, especially, it was largely my co-founder and I being super loud on LinkedIn. We both have pretty exhaustive networks, especially me with just the SaaS sales world. So posting regularly about a pain that hits home for a lot of people in my network, we got quite a few inbound leads from that. And then, yeah, going to events, even if we couldn't afford to exhibit, and just walking the trade show floor and eating our own dog food. Somebody would ask to scan our badge, and we say, well, you could look at what we do and watch this, and let's have a scan off, and show them how Mobley works, blow their minds, and generate business like that. We've got a podcast, and honestly, that's been about it until recently. And now we just started doing some outbounding and regular webinars, a little bit of SEO. But really, that's mostly organic up until the past few months.
Okay. And yeah, I love that. You can go to trade shows and just hit every single booth along the line and say, oh, by the way, yeah, I love that.
Yeah. We actually just got back from the Emblaze Digital Now Revenue Summit, formerly AAISP. Say that 5 times fast. It's terrible former name. I love the group. I'm glad they rebranded to Emblaze. But their revenue summit in Chicago last week, it's one of those conferences where the format is everybody is actually in sessions, and then during meals and breaks, they have 15 minutes, 20 minutes in the exhibitor area to grab food, coffee, whatever. So what we did is anytime people were in sessions, we would just walk around to the other exhibitors and network with them. And it was just a natural conversation. By the end of the event, there were 8 or 9 exhibitors that were actively testing out Mobley at the event, right with us, so that we could go troubleshoot things and train them, whatever.
That's great. I love that. And then switching to the fundraising side, looks like you raised a $2.5 million seed round. Is that right?
Yeah, we raised just shy of 450 in angel round last summer, and then just closed our official seed round about 8 weeks ago.
Okay. And then with that seed round of $2.5 million, were there triggers or milestones, or what led you to that seed raise?
Well, we have some early signs of a pretty strong product market fit. What our lead investor likes to say is we don't have product market fit yet because we haven't been through a full revenue cycle, but we definitely have concept market fit. Like, people are buying, the interest is there. So in order to prove that out and to just validate that this is a real thing, take advantage of the market with people coming back to events at an all-time high, we needed to pour some money in there and get a little fuel on the sales fire, as well as beef up the dev team to build a little bit of product defensibility.
Okay. And then for other founders listening who may be thinking about that seed round, any lessons learned that you'd like to pass along to them that you learned in that seed round?
Yeah, I have 2. Number 1, don't get cocky and think that you're an outlier when it comes to just the general seed round or the fundraising metrics. They say it's like 1 yes for every 100 meetings. We got 2 yeses in 96 meetings. And thankfully had some optionality between a couple of great investors. And then we also had to meet with another 60 or 70 follow-ons to fill the round. So it is a slog. It is a full-time job. Don't think that you're the exception to the rule. Like, run a process and meet with everybody you possibly can would be number 1. Number 2, we made one mistake and thankfully didn't have to pay for it too dearly. Once we signed the term sheet, we figured the follow-ons would come quick, and we wanted to show continued progress and revenue. So that's when we went out and hired our sales team, and our burn just went like that really quick, even though the round wasn't closed yet. So it came time, like a week or 2 before we closed, or we're like, well, crap, if this stalls, if it doesn't come through, if this one follow-on investor doesn't come in, then we are like completely out of money. I've put so much money into it. My co-founders put so much money into it. We've maxed out HELOCs on our houses, everything. Like, we don't need to put into this, and we're going to be in a world of hurt if we can't make payroll in a week and a half. All we had to do was wait a few more weeks to make the hires until the round closed, and we didn't do that. Thankfully, everything closed okay, but I definitely had 4 true panic attacks because of that, and it was not pretty.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I love that you kept those stats, because we hear a lot. Yeah, it takes a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions, but 2 out of 96 yeses, And then great advice about not, yeah, not starting to burn some money until that full round is closed. So appreciate that insight. And Zach, at this stage of your business, do you have a favorite number or metric that you're focused on to guide the business?
For us, it's a couple of things. So one that's unique to us is the number of scans or leads added to our database. It shows adoption, right? So we track that on a weekly basis. How big is the database increasing by? Is that number accelerating? Is it holding stagnant, decreasing, whatever? So that's a big one. And then from just kind of a North Star guidance, it's definitely revenue. We have some solid revenue targets, and at this early of a stage, we have our hypotheses about what our average deal size is, what our sales cycle length is. And everybody knows that it's an educated guess at best, but you're trying to operate as best you can to it so that you have predictability in the future. So for us, we're like, okay, we think it's going to be this, but what matters most is we hit this revenue target. If that means our deal size is half as big and we need to close twice as many, so be it. But this is our revenue target that we have to hit by the end of the year.
Yep, love that. Because we know, and especially as a CFO forecasting, a lot of forecasts or estimates based on the best available data at that time, and then we continue to update that over time. So things change. Well, Zach, really appreciate your time today. As we wrap up, what's coming up next for Mobley?
Well, we have a couple of big events. So we've got an event, actually back-to-back events in Vegas. We have the Experiential Marketing Summit at the end of April and Event Tech Live first week of May. So a lot of that, and then some on the product rollout side of things, some pretty big releases both on the mobile app and on the client portal side of things that'll just make usability a bit more easy for our users.
Okay, yeah, a lot of good stuff coming up. So Zach, really appreciate your time sharing your experiences today. If listeners would like to learn more about Mobley, where should we send them online?
So they can go to getmobley.com, getmobly.com, or just connect with me. If you search Zach Barney, I am the one with a cell phone, little emoji right in front of my name. That's how it's easy to differentiate me from anybody else.
Yep, I saw that. So easy to find Zach on LinkedIn, and then check out getmobley.com if you'd like to learn more about Mobley and what Zach's doing. So again, Zach, really appreciate you sharing your time and your experience today.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Andres Zuzzillo, co-CEO at MapOn. Andres, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben. Nice pronunciation for sure.
I tried my best. So appreciate that. So glad to have you on the show. Let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So as I said, my name is Andres Zuzzillo. I'm a co-CEO at MapOn. I'm basically, well, let me revert back because I don't know where you want to start. This is like my life or just about that company, maybe.
Yeah, before the company, it's like, do you have a technical background, business background? Tell us a little bit about your journey to get here.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I've been working with MapOn for 14 years. MapOn is 18 years old company. I joined 14 years ago. So I consider MapOn as a university for me because this is the first SaaS company I joined. And taking that in mind, I had also a great journey, to grow together with the company. So when I started, I was a sales rep for local market. At that time, MapOn was a local company only present in Latvia. And when I joined, it was the first time for me to dive deeper into SaaS business and learning how to sell, SaaS platform to transport companies. And at that time in Latvia, the companies were not so much into software solutions, And and during this time, and why I say university, I got to change my focus also towards the export markets and start working with the white label partnerships and adding new geographies for MapOn. And after that, I got a chance also to lead the sales team for Latvian market and other local markets and also for the export markets. And for the past 7.5 years, I've been co-managing the company together with Ingus Rūķis. So I'm more responsible for the commercial side. So basically that sales support, warehouse technicians, and that type of responsibilities. And Ingus is more responsible for the product side. So basically all development, engineering, IT project managers. And
Okay. And interesting. So you've been at MapOn a long time. So it looks like 14 of the 18 years. And 14 years ago, did the product start out as a SaaS architecture and SaaS subscription, or was it the more old school model of sell that perpetual license, charge maintenance? So was it SaaS from the beginning?
Yeah, I would say we were SaaS from the beginning, even 18 years behind. I don't know how many companies in Latvia at that stage were actually having the SaaS model, but I think we were definitely one of the first ones, apart from the mobile operators and telcos, who already kind of had that type of business. But we started very early, and I think one thing contributed to that because the majority or the founders and the majority holders today, they already started the social portal before. It's very similar to Facebook, and they had some subscription or SaaS business implemented at that stage, and I think that's how we ended up also with MapOn.
Okay. So really interesting. So you've been there a while, started out on the commercial sales side and working your way up to co-CEO. So a long journey. So yeah, let's talk about MapOn. What products and or services does MapOn offer?
Yeah, so today we are one of the leading fleet management companies here in Northern Europe. So we focus mainly on B2B companies, very, very little on B2C segment. And what we do is basically we help our clients to manage their fleets more efficiently, more safe, and according to EU regulation. And not only to EU regulation, but our customers are globally across 6 continents. And yeah, I mean, today we have about 30,000 customers across these six continents. Majority of them, I would say, are focused here in Europe. And yeah, we have about 200 white label partners. If you remember, I told you that we are focusing also on export markets. And with white label partners, and the way how we split our business from very beginning was that we were focusing on Latvia with the end customers, and then we started building these white label partnerships. And this is how we actually expanded and gained traction for MapOn. But over the years, we've been changing our focus to work more towards end customers ourselves.
Yeah, so sounds like, yeah, sizable company now. And does it, you mentioned 6 continents. So do like what you have to manage with fleet management, does it change per region or country? Are there different regulations that you have to follow, or is it you can kind of go to different geographies without worrying about local regulations?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, it really depends country to country. And that was one of the reasons why we started with white label partnership, because then the partner takes care of all the legislation about go-to-market strategy, about other aspects. Of course, we have to adapt the platform, but generally there's big difference. If you take, for example, European market, then all the truck drivers who drive trucks above 3.5 tons, they have to adhere to EU regulations and to driving and resting times. For example, in US, you have ELD solution where you have to kind of log all of the driving hours and resting hours. And if you not abide by those laws, you can get charged like up to 10,000+ euros. And then before our solution comes in and we help to train the drivers, we help to catch those infringements and adhere to those rules. And also, just help companies to be more transparent in that sense. So, I mean, if you think about MapOn, it's from very simple thing like tracking a dot on the map, which is your assets. It could be like trailers, it could be light vehicles, heavy trucks, it could be machinery, construction vehicles, tools, etc., etc. And it's up to complex solutions like having video telematics, where you have AI-based solutions and tracking if the driver is falling asleep by the wheel and then alerting him, and so it's very wide range, and it really depends from the vertical you are trying to get into.
And obviously trucking companies, obviously that seems like, right, a big prospect, but what other industries do you target with your product?
Yeah, I would say we are very much focused on heavy commercial transport, and that's why I mentioned the truck companies, international freight transport. It's also, of course, the road transport, so road maintenance, waste management companies. So in general, also construction companies, of course, but from verticals, I would say we probably touch every vertical because we have so many partners globally. So of course we have agriculture, light commercial vehicles, etc. But it's a very wide range. But we ourselves like to position ourselves more towards this heavy commercial transport, because if you imagine all the big trucks and machinery, they run on a lot of fuel, every hour or every 100 kilometers. And this is where we can actually save money for our customers and have the most benefit.
And is there a minimum fleet size where your solution makes sense?
I would say our ideal customer is 10+ vehicles. But again, we would probably have customers up to 10 vehicles and customers more than 2,000 vehicles. So
yeah, so quite the span there. And tell us a little bit about pricing. Is this per asset? How does the pricing work generally?
Yeah, so I mean, we charge per asset. It could be a vehicle, it could be a trailer, it could be a tool, it could be a driver. So really depending on that, and then what type of solution you use. For example, if you use Top-Ground for drivers, then of course we charge per driver. But generally, fleet management is per vehicle or per asset.
So per asset, and this question comes up a lot. When I work and talk to SaaS founders, is it's not really maybe usage based, but how often do you update those asset amounts, and how do you audit that?
Yep. For us, it's very simple. On every asset, we have a tracking device, and whenever we connect the tracking device to our platform, that's when we start actually charging the client for the subscription fee.
Okay, so if they just add a new truck, they hey, I know I've got to talk to Mapon, get a new device, and so on.
Exactly, yeah. And then depending on the country, you have different business models. Like, for example, in Latvia, where our headquarters is based, we have majority of the customers paying upfront for the hardware, for the tracking unit, and then paying the subscription. In other countries like Nordics, it's more a tendency to pack everything in. So you have hardware, you could have even inflation of the hardware packed in the subscription price.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned it because that comes up a lot with the hardware software plays. So do you do both where the hardware is included in that subscription, or do you also charge for the hardware separately?
Yeah, so both scenarios. So depending on the country, but what we see the trend today is more that you have to include the hardware in your subscription, and then of course we try to make the trade, with the customers. So if we offer with this rent model, we try to lock a client in, I don't know, for 12 months, 24 months. It really depends, So I mean, it's a commitment from our side and commitment from their side in sense.
Okay, and are these generally multi-year contracts that you're signing with your customers?
Yes, but I would say that majority of our contracts are so that you can quit Mapon if you want in a couple of days, but our churn is very low, stickiness is very high. So in that sense, the Mapon product is very sticky. But the contracts are it could be a month, but we are trying to move towards having these longer contracts.
Yeah, it seems like a very sticky product, especially with, say, regulations, mandates, things to track and driver rules, etc. So say like a retention number, gross revenue retention number, what do you think is a good number or a target for Mapon?
Well, everything above 100 is considered good, and we are definitely above 100. So very healthy, and I would say, a very good number there.
Okay, so above 100 for, say, net revenue retention, and then are you hitting above 90% for gross revenue retention?
Above 100. So we are. So
okay. And then so you founded your co-CEO, and the company was founded about 2006 then?
Yeah, the company was founded in 2006. Yes, correct. So 18 years ago. Okay. And then I have to mention that during the time we have been always bootstrap company. We have been always profitable, always cash flow positive. It's not an overnight success for sure. When we took over the company, the management of the company, we were about 26 employees and 3 million consolidated revenue. And today we are 180 employees and 17.3 million consolidated revenue.
Okay. So are the original founders still involved, or is that when you mentioned that 26 employees, did they exit the company?
Oh no, the original founders are still here. They are not running daily operations, but they are in supervisory board and of course still present in the board meetings. But their concept was from day one almost that they don't run the companies themselves, and they trust the next successor or whatever to lead the company. Okay.
And what point was that so it sounds like they know it's like we've maybe have to step aside. We need someone else to run the company, to scale the company. So around what revenue level, and maybe you mentioned it before, that they decided to step aside?
I think for them it was even before I joined. I mean, at that stage, they already were not involved in daily operations. So when I joined the company, we already have a CEO in place, but yeah, so I would say very early, and it's not only because of Mapon, but because we belong to this Draugiem group. We are under one umbrella. We have 10 companies, and there was companies which started earlier, like the social portal Draugiem LV, and they already did that change in that company.
Okay. And then, so do you have a headquarters location then in Latvia?
Yes, so we are headquartered in Latvia. We have actually a branch in Spain, in Barcelona, but then we have also daughter companies in Finland, Denmark, Estonia, and Lithuania.
Okay. Okay. So all over the place. And then you mentioned this before, I didn't catch it, but what's your current team size?
Yeah, team size is 180 employees, around that number. So it changes month to month.
Okay. Yeah. About 180 employees. And then did you say about 17 million in revenue?
Yeah, 17.3 million in revenue.
Okay. And is that euros?
That's euros, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So good size. And then tell us, like, I didn't ask before, but a little bit about your go-to-market motion. Who are you reaching out to in these, heavy commercial, fleet companies to try to sell your product?
Yeah, it could be depending on the size. I mean, if you target smaller companies, usually it's a CEO. And sometimes for the smaller company, you have the CEO who also had a background of driving a truck, then transitioning to having a company, then finding contracts and things like that. So depending on the size, I mean, there differs, but usually it's a fleet operator, if somebody who manages all the fleets, making sure, that they get the goods and things like that. But CFO is definitely involved because it's all about finances. And whenever you try to prove, that it will save money for them and create this transparency across all the processes, it's very important. Yeah.
And so what kind of sales motion are you using to reach out? I assume there are quite a few prospects out there. So is this outbound email calling motion? Tell us a little bit about how you find your prospects.
Yes. So I would say we are a sales-driven company, maybe a little bit old school. I don't know. Would have to probably compare, but the way how we do the outreach it's classic. So we do cold calls. So we have an SDR who just basically gets a database for the customers, then just goes through the list, does the cold calls, arranges the meetings. Then our sales managers goes to those meetings, hopefully close them, and then we come back. And then of course we have support, but regarding marketing, I mean, we haven't been focusing so much in marketing, but this is what we are doing today, and basically trying to scale up the marketing and getting the leads also from marketing.
Okay. And on the marketing side, I was going to ask, I mean, do the operators of these fleets, I mean, is there an education aspect, say when you talk marketing, or do they just know like, hey, these are the regulations I have to follow, or is there some marketing aspect where there's an education component where maybe you can start getting out inbound leads?
Yeah, so regulation is one for sure. So for example, as you would have this driving and resting times regulation. So that's kind of mandatory. You have to store the data for a certain period of time. There's police which can stop you on the road and then check this data if you are adhering to that. But then there is, for example, also toll roads where they have implemented that if you have a GPS tracking device, then whenever you enter a country, you don't have to stop and pay for the toll road, but the tracking device sends the data to the government institutions, and then it already knows that you are there, and the payment process happens automatically. So of course, these type of legislations are driving our industry and helps us for sure, But in terms of education, I mean, of course, we are doing education on our side as well. It could be through marketing. It could be through client days, which we organize, for example, in our offices, and then invite our customers to learn more about products and like how it could benefit them. And it's also our salespeople who usually talk to the clients, talk about our products and solution.
Okay. And then let's switch over to the capital and fundraising front. You mentioned bootstrapped for a long time and early on profitability. And it looks like you just raised 3 million euros.
Yes. So we just did an issuance of bonds. So that was 3 million euros. And that was our first capital outside of, our group.
Okay. So first outside capital, 3 million euros. So was there a trigger or something that led you to a raise versus just continuing the bootstrapping route?
Yes, for us, it was actually that we've been doing some M&As for past 4 years, and we've seen that we've been successful with that, and we wanted to continue that. We also see that, in European market, for example, the market is very fragmented, and there's a lot of consolidation happening, and we definitely wanted to be a part of this consolidation. And yeah, so we started building this M&A pipe early. And we knew that, we will need money for that. And that was like our trigger why we even thought about issuing bonds. And there's a couple of more things like, when you issue bonds versus attracting, I don't know, from private equity or VC funds, you don't have to give away shares in the company, at this stage. So that's also an important criteria because we see Mapon growing in the future and we want to be way bigger before we attract any other investors.
Okay, yeah, right. So keep all that equity and then raise a little cash to then continue your M&A activities. And with M&A, and you've had a pipeline and targets and maybe continue to target companies for acquisition, how do you go about that process just with you and internal team looking at that? Do you have outside advisors that also help you in the M&A process?
Yeah, so it depends. I mean, we have targets like our white label partners, which is part of our M&A story. So we can acquire our partners, the ones who grow the fastest, the ones maybe who are struggling a little bit with finances and with cash flow, and we come in, and help scale the company and scale up the operation in that market. And then we could look also for companies outside of our partner portfolio. And depending on certain cases, we would attract advisors, usually it would be a legal advisor, maybe a tax advisor as well. But we kind of tend to reach out to the founders and owners ourselves and then attract this legal advisor, along the way.
Yeah, that's really interesting because you had mentioned 200 white label partners. And so you acquire those white label partners who are doing well, which is just really, really interesting. And these white label partners, did they have, say, for some of their own fleet management product, or are they a traditional just a reseller house? Tell us about the kind of average composition of these white label partners.
Yeah, when we started, I think our strategy was to attract anybody who wants to be part of this business, of this subscription business, of SaaS business, and in fleet management. And then we spent loads of time on teaching and learning. And then we realized that it doesn't scale. It's great for starters, but it really doesn't scale. And then we established a different strategy. So we said, okay, we have to go after companies who already are in this business. Maybe they have built the software themselves and are struggling with the competition because you have very big players in Europe like Verizon. You could have Samsara from US, right, coming into European market. And you as a small player cannot really compete with them and bring in all the new solutions and et cetera, right? So yeah, we definitely are targeting companies, I don't know, 5K vehicles, more than 5K vehicles under their portfolio, and then replacing with Mapon and then upgrading their business, and upgrading their solution. And that's where we come in.
And, that's a big thing when founders think about all their go-to-market channels and then should I build out a partner channel? So tell us, because that requires investment, right? You have to manage. At first you're like, hey, let's just attract everybody, but maybe that doesn't work. We've got to educate them, continue that relationship. So do you have an internal team or a couple staff that are focused on making sure your white label partners are successful?
Yes. So we have a separate team. So generally it's export sales managers, or they could be actually partners to our partners, because when you deal with the white label partners, you don't have, 30,000 customers. You have 200 white label partners. You can split them amongst the sales managers, and they can take care of those partners on a different level. It's more like key account management, I would say. So yeah, we have people taking care of that. We actually have different levels. We have the ones who are searching for new partners in new countries and new markets, and then they are trying to get that customer to a certain level, And once he gets to the certain level, we pass it on to somebody else, who then takes care of that certain partner and tries to, work with him and introduce new solutions and try to grow with him afterwards.
Okay, yeah, appreciate that insight. Yeah, it takes investment people to make that successful. So Andres, at this scale of your company, about 17 million euros, do you have a favorite number or numbers or metrics that you're focused on to guide the business?
Yeah, we definitely focus on churn. So that's very important for us. And we have actually built our motivational systems or schemes around that. So that's kind of important for us. Recurring revenue is, I would probably say that's number one, and then churn. Mm-hmm. So recurring revenue, we say it's our bread and butter. So we definitely focus on that. Yeah, I would say those are the two biggest ones. Of course, we focus on retention, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So recurring revenue, of course, retention/churn. And yeah. Andres, really appreciate your time today. As we wrap up, tell us what's coming up next for Mapon.
Yeah, so I think for us, we are looking to grow in new markets, add on more geographies. Most likely, it could be happening through M&As. So we could be looking at issuing more bonds later on to fuel our M&A growth. And we definitely want to be one of the top 10 players in fleet management space in European market. So our ambitious is definitely big.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So grow new markets, more M&A, a lot of excitement coming up. So I just really appreciate your time today. If listeners would like to learn more about Mapon, where should we send them online?
Yeah, you can go to www.mapon.com. So find out there.
So check out Mapon. So it's MAPON.com. And again, Andres, really appreciate your time and sharing your experience today.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Beneficial interest in it unless there's.
In the world of law, trusts play a crucial role. Trusts help protect assets and ensure they're used as intended. Think of them as a way to hold property for someone else's benefit. There are different types of trusts, each with its own rules. In essence, a trust involves three parties: the settlor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. The settlor creates the trustee manages it, the beneficiary receives the benefits. Today we're focusing on presumed resulting trusts and constructive trusts. Understanding these differences is crucial in legal disputes. It can affect who gets what when things go wrong. We'll explore how these trusts work in practice and look at real-world examples and key legal cases.
Let's start with presumed resulting trusts. If someone contributes to the purchase of property, they're presumed to have a beneficial interest in it unless there's evidence to the contrary. It's like if you help a friend buy a car, the law assumes you have some stake in it. Constructive trusts, on the other hand, are imposed by the court to prevent unfairness. They arise when it would be wrong for the legal owner to deny the beneficial interest of another party. The key difference lies in how these trusts come about. Presumed resulting trusts are based on presumption. Constructive trusts are based on the court's sense of what's fair. This difference can have big implications in legal disputes. Both types of trusts can provide remedies for plaintiffs. The court has more flexibility with constructive trusts, which can lead to fairer outcomes but also create uncertainty.
To understand these trusts, we need to look at their history. One key case is Hussey v. Palmer from 1972. Lord Denning imposed a constructive trust in a situation where traditionally there would have been none. Another important case is Redention from 1975, which reinforced the traditional view of resulting trusts. Then there's Lloyds Bank plc v. Rossett from 1990, which set out clearer rules for establishing constructive trusts in family homes. The court said there needed to be clear evidence of an agreement or intention to share property. These cases show how trust law has evolved over time. They reflect changing social attitudes and legal thinking. The debate they sparked is still ongoing today. It's a debate about how flexible the law should be. It's about balancing the need for clear rules with the desire for fair outcomes in individual cases. This ongoing debate shapes the application of trust law in modern times.
Lord Denning was a controversial figure in English law. In the 1970s, he proposed a new model constructive trust. Denning wanted to use constructive trusts to achieve what he saw as fair outcomes. His approach was most clearly seen in the Hussey v. Palmer case. In this case, a mother-in-law had paid for an extension to her son-in-law's house. When the marriage broke down, Denning used a constructive trust to give her a share in the property. Denning's new model was based on the idea of doing what is right. He wanted judges to have more flexibility to impose trusts where they thought it was fair. This was a radical idea and went against the traditional view that trusts should be based on clear rules and intentions. However, Denning's approach was controversial. Many lawyers and judges thought it went too far and worried it would create uncertainty in the law. This debate between Denning's flexible approach and the traditional, more rigid approach continues today.
Denning's new model constructive trust faced significant criticism. Many legal scholars thought it gave judges too much power and made the law unpredictable. Critics argued that Denning's approach blurred the lines between different areas of law. Trusts, they said, should be based on clear principles. Some academics defended Denning's approach, saying it allowed the law to keep up with changing social attitudes. They argued that rigid rules could lead to unfair outcomes in individual cases. Denning's approach, they said, allowed judges to do justice in each specific situation. This debate reflects a broader tension in law between flexibility and certainty. The criticism of Denning's approach led to a backlash in the courts. Later judges tried to limit the use of constructive trusts. This led to decisions like Lloyds Bank, PLC v. Rosset, which set out clearer rules for when constructive trusts could be used. The debate, however, is far from over.
Lord Brown Wilkinson offered a different perspective on constructive trusts. He made an important distinction between institutional and remedial constructive trusts. In the case of Westdeutsche Landsbank, Girozentrale v. Islington, LBC in 1996. Institutional constructive trusts arise automatically in certain situations and don't depend on a court decision. For example, if a trustee misuses trust property, an institutional constructive trust arises immediately. Remedial constructive trusts, on the other hand, are created by the court as a remedy. They don't exist until the court decides to impose them. This gives courts more flexibility, but also creates more uncertainty. Brown Wilkinson's approach tries to balance certainty and flexibility. Institutional constructive trusts provide certainty in clear-cut cases. Remedial constructive trusts allow for flexibility in more complex situations. This distinction has been influential, but it's not universally accepted. Some judges and scholars still prefer a more unified approach to constructive trusts.
Let's look at some real-world examples to make these concepts clearer. Imagine a couple, Alice and Bob, buy a house together. Alice pays 70% of the price and Bob pays 30%. Unless they agree otherwise, there's a presumed resulting trust. Alice is presumed to own 70% of the house and Bob 30%. Now, consider a different scenario. Charlie asks his friend Dave to hold some money for him. Dave agrees, but then spends the money on himself. A court might impose a constructive trust here. Even though Dave legally owned the money, he'd be seen as holding it on trust for Charlie. He'd have to pay it back. These examples show how trusts work in practice and how they can address different types of unfairness. Trusts can have a big impact on property rights. They can change who really owns or benefits from property. For example, if a court finds a constructive trust, the legal owner might have to share the property's value with someone else. Resulting trusts can also affect property rights. They can give someone a share in property they didn't legally own. This often happens in family situations. For example, if a parent helps a child buy a house, they might have a resulting trust interest in it. These trusts can create uncertainty in property ownership. Someone might think they fully own a property, only to find out later that someone else has a trust interest in it. On the other hand, trusts can protect property rights in some situations. They can prevent people from being unfairly deprived of property they've contributed to. The challenge is balancing these protective effects with the need for certainty in property ownership.
Several key legal principles come into play with these trusts. One is the principle of equity, the idea that the law should be fair and just. Equity allows courts to look beyond strict legal ownership to find fair solutions. Another principle is the intention of the parties, crucial in resulting trust cases. The court tries to determine what the parties intended when they contributed to property. The principle of certainty is also important. The law generally tries to provide clear rules that people can rely on. This is why some judges are wary of using constructive trusts too freely. There's also the principle of preventing unjust enrichment. The idea is that people shouldn't profit unfairly at others' expense. If someone has benefited unfairly, a constructive trust can be used to correct this. These principles allow the law to address a wide range of unfair situations.
The debate over these trusts is far from settled. At its heart is a tension between certainty and fairness. On one side are those who argue for clear, predictable rules. They say this allows people to plan their affairs with confidence. This view favors a more limited use of constructive trusts. On the other side are those who argue for more flexibility. They say rigid rules can lead to unfair outcomes in individual cases. They argue that judges should have the power to impose trusts where it's fair to do so. This view supports a broader use of constructive trusts. This debate reflects broader questions about the role of law in society. Should the law prioritize clear rules that everyone can understand and follow? Or should it focus on achieving fair outcomes in each specific case? This debate is likely to continue for many years to come.
As we've seen, trust law is complex and often controversial. The debate between resulting and constructive trusts reflects deeper tensions in the law. It's about balancing certainty with flexibility, rules with fairness. This balance is crucial for a well-functioning legal system. Looking to the future, it's likely that trust law will continue to evolve. New situations will arise that challenge existing rules. Courts will have to decide whether to stick to traditional approaches or develop new ones. This evolution will be shaped by changing social attitudes and economic realities. One area to watch is the impact of technology on trusts. Digital assets and cryptocurrencies are creating new challenges for trust law. Ultimately, the goal of trust law is to protect people's rights and ensure fairness. Whether through resulting trusts or constructive trusts, the law tries to achieve just outcomes.
This episode of the What the FinTech podcast is sponsored by Zenerate. Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of What the FinTech, the podcast from the team behind FinTech Futures and the Banking Technology magazine. My name is Paul Hindle, editor at FinTech Futures, and for this episode we're joined by Casey Denby, VP of Sales at US tech firm Zenerate. Casey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. Excited to be here today and excited to share a little bit about AI, how we're leveraging it in the space, and hopefully that's something that is of interest to the listeners.
Excellent, for sure. And I'm sure our listeners are definitely interested in the AI boom that's going on at the moment. So it's great to have you on the show. Just to get started, would you like to quickly let us know then a bit more about yourself then and what you're up to at Zenerate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take you back a little bit. My career actually didn't start in sales. I'm not your traditional sales guy. So I spent 15 years in operational and training leadership and did that across multiple organizations. So companies that the audience would likely recognize. Comcast, very large telecommunications company, produces a lot of movies, has theme parks, provides your television service. I worked at Dish Network, and also Western Union, which operates in the UK as well as all over the planet, really. And I led operations and training teams in those particular organizations. And one of my roles, I led global training for Western Union, which is all customer care centers across the globe. So we had a pretty big footprint. We had over 14 countries as far as call centers in those countries, 35 languages supported, and about 5,000 agents at peak. Average run rate was around 3,200. So pretty significantly sized operation. And my role was design, delivery of training, but I also led the quality assurance organization and I led the knowledge management organization, as well as basically everything shared services with the exclusion of workforce management. And in that role, I actually became a customer of Zenerate. So I was customer number 4 of the company that now I represent. And fast forward a few years, I joined the organization and took on the role of VP of sales. So that's how I got here.
Excellent. That's a really interesting pathway into it as well, going from customer into company as well. So thanks for that, Casey. On the show this week, we'll be taking a deeper dive into an area of the wonderful world of AI that we haven't touched on yet, and that is AI simulation training for call agents. We'll discuss the main use cases for AI simulation training, the types of simulations banks and other financial institutions can utilize, and how this type of training can specifically benefit these firms, as well as the work that Zenerate has been doing in the field. That's all to come a bit later, but as always, to get us started is our news and numbers segment. This is where our guest has gone out and found a news story featuring an interesting number to discuss. So Casey, what have you brought along for us today?
Yeah, great question, Paul. So I gravitated to the story FinTech Futures Jobs, and it's titled 3 Ways That AI is Changing FinTech Jobs. I think most people have the assumption that AI is just replacing human beings left and right, just taking our jobs. I mean, we're all going to be jobless. We're all going to be run by robots and AI technology around the planet. In some instances, there is some truth to that, in the sense that we're replacing really low-hanging fruit in that sense. But ultimately, what's happening is AI is augmenting human jobs, and it's just shifting the landscape of where people's skill sets reside, because that is where the world is moving. Think Industrial Revolution. I mean, it didn't eliminate all jobs. It just shifted the landscape. That's what's happening today. And in fact, this article says that there is an expected increase of 133 million new jobs globally because of AI over the next few years. And that's what caught my attention.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, like you say, there's been a tendency by some to look at it from a almost dystopian perspective of how many jobs might AI replace. But actually, the data seems to be suggesting there's actually going to be a huge amount of jobs being created from this, which is always a positive. I mean, from your vantage point, with the boom in popularity of AI over this last year, how much of an impact has this had on Zenerate and the work that you guys are doing over there? But in particular, looking at banks and financial services firms as well, do you see them clamoring for new use cases at the moment for AI?
That's a really great question, Paul. So our CEO and co-founder, his name's Brian Toot. He actually came from the banking space, banking, debt buying, collections. He had a career in that space, worked for very large companies, MBNA, one of those, and then the acquisition from Bank of America. And he led all contact centers at Bank of America and at MBNA, was very familiar with the landscape. And because of that experience, he actually came up with the idea of simulated training through AI. Now, AI at the time, 6 years ago, was a pretty new concept. There wasn't a whole lot going on out there. But what happened was, as soon as one bank caught hold of the vision, which Bank of America was one of the first, and they are still a customer today, many others started jumping in the party, right? It's like, well, what are you guys doing over there? Banking has this fear of missing out, the whole FOMO concept of, well, they're doing it, we got to do it too. That works out to our benefit, but also to the benefit of those that our solution or technology helps. And we'll get into that, but it's simulated training for frontline associates. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of billions, potentially billions of people that work in these types of roles where they have human to human conversations on the daily. And our tech is helping them. And if it helps their people perform better, yes, there's definitely interest in waves within the banking space. And I can tell you this, AI itself, just the terminology has caught on. It's very sexy, you could say, quote unquote. People are like, we got to get into AI, like CEOs all over the place. If we're not doing something with AI, we're left behind. That has been a pretense for a couple of years now. But over the past 6 months, I would say it is hyper accelerated, where almost every organization is realizing, and I think that's partially because of the introduction of ChatGPT and how even my 13-year-old and my 11-year-old know how to use it and go online. They can type stuff in. Hey, tell me what this means, or rewrite this paragraph for me, whatever that may be. And they're getting a glimpse into the power of AI technology and understanding how it can actually benefit, human beings around the globe. So companies are really finding out how to leverage this within their businesses, and they're testing out different technologies today, and that includes us.
Excellent, excellent. Before we move into the specifics then, I mean, when you look at the kind of like greater AI landscape and where things might be heading, what are some of the big AI use cases that you're most excited about right now?
Great question. In general, AI needs to be leveraged, in my opinion, and this is, I think, where things are going, to help human beings have a better life, perform better in their jobs, be happier. The list goes on. So go back to what we were just talking about. AI is not here to replace the human being per se. It's here to help us. We need to be able to leverage the technology to help us be better, more efficient, more effective, more productive. It's not necessarily going to always make life easier. But if you even go back 10 years, before we had these amazing smartphones that can do what they do today, and also all of the applications within those smartphones that allow us to be more productive and more effective, Instead of calling my financial institution now, Paul, I just go on my app. It identifies my face in seconds, and I can look at my account balance. I can look at my transaction history. I can transact right there on my telephone. That was not possible 10 years ago. And that is where technology needs to continue to make the human experience better. And so from our perspective, we want AI, and we're seeing this demand in AI helping people become better. There was this jump early on. You probably heard of chatbots. I'm sure the audience has heard of chatbots. You've all been caught in an IVR at some point in time. And also these chatbots that are leveraging AI to solve customer problems were not very effective at first. In fact, they're still not very effective today. I'm not a huge fan of chatbots. When I call in to my bank, it's because I couldn't self-serve. So don't force me to try and self-serve now through another bot when I already know I'm tech proficient, I'm tech savvy. I couldn't do something and I need a human being to help me. So that's where AI is coming. And that's what we've done at Zenerate is leveraged AI to better the human being in their role and also better the human experience. If you think about just kind of in general where we're going, human beings want to talk to human beings when they make a phone call. That's just the reality. When they pick up the phone, and by the way, not a lot of people like to talk on the phone these days, but when they pick up the phone, there's a study that we actually co-sponsored. We didn't run the study, totally independent from execs in the know. 67%, almost 70% of customers prefer to speak to a live agent over everything else. They want to talk to a human being. And they're also saying that 80% of all resolution is happening with a live human being. So even if they came in and tried to go through this chatbot 8 out of 10 times, they're finishing the conversation, actually resolving their issue over the phone. So that tells me that we need to make the human being better and more proficient and able to handle those customer engagements, issues, interactions as they come in.
That sounds great. So, I mean, on that point then, obviously Zenerate specializing in that AI simulation training. Can you tell us a little bit more about that then and how that works specifically?
Absolutely. Okay. Everybody has been on an airplane for the most part. I would assume most of your listeners have been on an airplane or had to call an airline at one point in time. Imagine you're answering calls now for a major financial institution. So let's say a major bank or an airline. Typically, when they get hired, there's information overload, and the brain can only handle so much. We can only retain so much information. The learning pyramid that's been proven over time says that 5% of all lecture information is retained. PowerPoints, lectures, LMS videos, and things like that, 5 to 10% at maximum. That's not enough to be effective when they hit the production floor. So what was missing was practice, doing the job before they did the job. Unfortunately, they would practice on actual customers, and they weren't anywhere near production floor or performance ready. Think of going into a game. Let's say you're going to play football. If you're going in and you're the striker and you have no idea how to be a striker, or you're not prepared, or you haven't trained throughout the off season, it's going to be catastrophic. You're going to hurt your team. You're not going to be very effective. Everybody, even in America, we jumped on the Ted Lasso train. I think everybody is excited about football and the Premier League and things like that. But the reality is you have to train and you have to practice, or you're not going to be productive. I don't care who you are. I mean, there's a few, maybe Messi, but Messi has put in a lot of time, right? He doesn't get that good by just watching and sitting on the sidelines. He gets that good by training, time and time again, repetition. So what we've done is created a simulated learning experience. Think of it as a flight simulator. You go in and you practice before you ever get in the cockpit of an actual plane. That's actually not even allowed. You have to put in a certain number of hours required by the FAA in order to be a captain. And then at that, you don't just get to the captain seat. You have to be a co-pilot, co-captain. So there's this progression, but you have to get the hours in. And it's the same concept, but we've created that so you can actually simulate that entire learning experience without risk of your systems, data, talking to customers, and damaging the customer experience. and they get the practice of the role. So they can practice the conversation, like talking right now, like you and I are having a conversation. We can simulate this conversation. We also have in the moment coaching. So they learn their company's best and required practices and soft skills and things like that so that they can successfully navigate those conversations with customers when they engage with them. And finally, also the software or system that you're navigating. We simulate that all simultaneous, and you go in and you get performance scorecards. And we can get into that in a bit, but in essence, we've simulated the job itself so that they can practice before they actually get out on the pitch, let's say, and play in the game.
Excellent. So what would you say then are some of the kind of core use cases and how business has been looking to use this tech then?
There's 3 core use cases. There's more than this, but the 3 core use cases, we really started in the new hire space, Paul. Makes sense. Brand new to your job, tons of information to learn. We understand the whole learning by practice methodology or concept. It's proven. So that was number 1. Number 2 was nobody's perfect when they're finished with training. You continue to develop and grow over time. And I think it's silly to assume that people don't need additional training and additional learning as they continue to progress. In fact, the inverse is true. They need consistent development. They need consistent skills training. So our simulator technology can be leveraged for both of those use cases. And then finally, pre-hire. So before you bring somebody in the door and you hire them, it's very expensive to hire someone, especially in a contact center. The average cost of replacement is significant. It's over $20,000, and it's $9,000 to $14,000 just to get them in, train them. And then if you have to go back and do it again because they left, yikes. So getting the right people in the door is also another use case. You can actually put them in a simulator, see if they have just a couple of the basic skills, but it also level sets the job so they understand what I'm getting into. That's part of the issue as well. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that people would not be patient or kind to me on the telephone all the time. And so it's a good level set from the candidate standpoint as well, and they can self-select out. And so those are the 3 primary use cases that we see. There are more, such as manager feedback delivery to their employees and things like that. But those are the 3 primary, Paul: pre-hire, new hire, tenured employees.
Excellent. That sounds good. And I mean, looking at like banking and finance specifically, I mean, what type of simulations could these companies then be using, and how is that helping them specifically, I guess, with their jobs?
Yeah, awesome question. So let's start high level. There's a lot of use cases. In fact, some of our customers use us across every single use case at their bank, at their financial institution. But let's start with a few. The most obvious is the call center. Customer service, people are calling in, they have issues, I can't log in, I need to reset my password. What's this issue that I see? It's not correct, etc. But also collections, fraud and disputes, credit card, sales, wealth management, retail banking centers. In fact, the people that welcome you when you go into a branch location, transaction inquiries. I can't log in, I can't pay my bill, the funds transfer issue, rewards. So that's kind of getting into the more specific simulations themselves. But there's a lot of different use cases across any organization. But banks tend to have a lot more use cases than your standard company. And we are able to help in every single one of them. In fact, at Bank of America, we are leveraging their AI technology with over 100,000 associates. That's a pretty big number. And it spans across 11 different use cases. A lot of the ones that I just kind of stepped through.
Excellent, excellent. And I mean, banking agents deal with more complex issues than most call center agents. How does your AI simulation training then really help to get to the core of some of those issues and train them in some of those issues to help them get through those?
Yeah. So while it's simulating the experience, our AI coach actually simulates the customer. So it feels like they're talking to a real human being. It's a real human voice. The feedback from our agents is that, wow, this feels real. It feels like I'm on an actual phone call and I'm actually going through the scenario that I need to. And so Zenerate scores learners based on actual call skill proficiency. Think soft skills, effective quality standards, and best in required practices of your organization. Every company is a little bit different. Every company has their own coaching methodology, their own quality standards, their own expectations. But in general, most are fairly consistent. We need to deliver a great experience and we need to do it quickly. Resolving a customer issue is a big deal. Showcasing empathy is a big deal. Mirroring conversation through active listening that's a big deal. Compliance requirements, disclosures, verbatims, big deal. So thinking of those kind of more umbrella type topics, and then we are able to evaluate all of those skills. And before they ever talk to a live customer, you know if they're proficient or they're not proficient. And you can give them the yes, you can move forward and talk to our customers, or no, you can't. You're not ready yet. Maybe they won't be ever. And you can see that inside the platform because each learner gets a comprehensive individual learner scorecard. And we also have a lot of insights reporting that banks, financial institutions of any size, any scope can go in and immediately assess how people are doing from a performance standpoint. And it's not just, did you read something or did you say a certain word? There are other companies in the space that are focused on keywords and scripted responses, like reading a response back. That's not true learning. True learning is actually using your own words without scripting and still getting to the intent of the skill, such as, did I empathize with Paul? Did I show, any sort of interest and care in the customer that I was talking to? And was I comprehensive? Was I proficient? Did I understand the bank way in order to get the objective of that particular conversation? So all of that can be done. You can evaluate different training cohorts. Like I said, individuals. You can look at any time frame, any roll up, any geo. You can look by country. You can look by globe, call center, you name it. We can evaluate those skills and essentially give your trainers and your managers and your call center operations leaders comfort and confidence that their people are hitting the expected performance standards before they put them in front of their customer base.
Excellent. That sounds great. And one of the big talking points with AI is often the accuracy. How have you gone about developing your offering to ensure accuracy is there?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you think about accuracy of a bot, that's part of the frustration when I'm calling in. That's why people are so frustrated, because it's not helping me. It doesn't understand me. It's not listening. Zenary uses the most advanced NLU and NLP. So that means natural language understanding and natural language processing technology in existence today. And those models are incredibly precise. We have top tier AI engineers who understand this space and understand the model and are able to craft that model within the Zenary kind of environment that our users get to leverage. And so accent comprehension is incredibly high and incredibly precise. Listening to your words, the speech to text, not only is it fast, but it's accurate. And so it'll transcribe what you're saying immediately on the screen in front of you. And then within seconds, I mean like a second and a half, it puts it all in proper grammar and punctuation, and it maintains a transcript that can be reviewed by a supervisor or even by the individual learner at any point in time after the practice is completed. And so our AI is able to do that. It also listens for and coaches to the bank best and required practices. So if I expect you to do this behavior at this point in an interaction or any point in the interaction, our AI is able to understand, did they hit the intent? Did they do that? Yes or no? And it's essentially, did they pass or fail each particular step? And we can pinpoint, hey, Paul's really struggling on empathy. Here's where he struggled in the conversation. You can go back and listen to that, but you also have a comprehensive scorecard, as I mentioned before. So you don't even have to listen per se, but you can, if you want to, you can drill down. And this is where it's providing a ton of value, because the individual gets in the moment feedback. And think about it as a personalized, unbiased AI coach, like human role play partner. That's what they're getting, is a consistent, scalable experience across all learners. So there's no bias, no human role play bias, anything like that. And if you imagine peer-to-peer learning, we've all done it. We've all done role play with peers. Nobody knows what they're doing, really. We're in learning and we're trying to figure it out. So it's not the most effective use of our time. And then if you do group role play, you got one person up there doing a training and 20 people sitting there watching, when they could all be practicing with their AI coach. And so what we see is, we've actually seen from financial institutions, from healthcare companies, you name the industry, but I'll speak specific to fintech here in the banking space. 44 hours of human role play was consolidated down to 2.5. 1,700% efficiency gain in training, because they leveraged our AI coach technology. Everybody was able to practice at the same time, get the same amount of reps, very consistent scorecard. Trainers absolutely love it. Learners love it more than anyone because it's helping them become proficient and do better at their role. And that's what I was alluding to earlier, which is our AI is helping human beings become better at their job.
Excellent. And I mean, there's a few different companies in the space at the moment, but what is it that makes Zenerate unique, would you say? I mean, I think some of the things like the reporting insights that you mentioned earlier seem like real kind of pluses there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say in general, there's a couple of different things. And the first one is that our Zenerate replicates human role play as close to the human experience as possible. So learners practice in their own words without scripting. That's difference number one. Other organizations out there, as I mentioned, they're scripted or keyword based. So they program in, you have to say this word or that word or you get it wrong. But if you say this word, it's right. No matter what else you say, that's not really getting to the point. You could game the system in 2 seconds. Hey, I learned that I just have to say, I'm sorry, check the box, move forward. Doesn't matter what else I say. Or I just need to read this and then it's accurate. That's not actual replication of human role play. That's just a little improvement from where we were at before with antiquated training. So that's difference number one. Difference number two is the in-the-moment robust coaching and performance scorecard. So you get in-the-moment coaching. I'm going to use Mario Brothers as the example. So Paul, I would assume you're familiar with Nintendo and Super Mario Brothers at some point, whether it was the original or the latest and greatest on Nintendo Switch. What I can tell you is it's very similar to a level in Mario Brothers where you start and you have to conquer certain objectives and steps in the level to get to the flag and successfully go to the next level, advance to the next level. It's the same concept, but if you make a mistake, it doesn't just magically send you to the end and say, congratulations, you finished. You actually get in the moment coaching that says, hey, Paul, that's not a best practice. Try again. Or whatever that feedback is that the bank wants to implement, 100% customizable, by the way. So it can say whatever you want it to say. And it can be as detailed as you want it to be. So you can give them the answer or you can lead them to the answer without giving it to them per se. That's a huge difference because they get that in the moment coaching, in the moment feedback. I think of it as learning how to play golf. You understand that if you were to be told 2 weeks after you played a round, hey, you need to change your grip and your alignment. If you did this, that'd be great. You're like, dude, why didn't you tell me when I was doing it? Well, that's what we do and others don't, is we give that in the moment coaching so that they can get the learning that they need in the moment. And what happens is retention jumps to all-time highs. Retention jumps to over 75% when they get that practice and they get that coaching. And so that's a huge difference as well. And then finally, our ability to scale and support globally across a variety of languages, 15 to be exact at the current moment. And by the end of the year, we'll be able to support over 50 is a huge differentiator between us and the rest as well.
That sounds great. And I mean, you've mentioned there as well, you've got a few banking customers there. You mentioned Bank of America, obviously, as well as you've been going through. Can you share any trends then and statistics of the benefits that they're seeing with the platform and the impact that's having on their businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. There are large improvements in standard KPIs across the board. So when you think of a new hire coming on board, the number one objective is to get them to a level of proficiency where they can service your customers effectively, right? Not just get on the phone and say whatever they want to say or mess up here and there or all the time, but effectively. So that when your customers call in, you have confidence they're going to be served and they're going to have a great experience and they're going to want to come back. So speed of proficiency is the first metric of critical impact. And we have significant numbers here. On average, we see 50% plus improvements in speed of proficiency. And that is conservative at some companies. But at minimum, you're seeing 20 to 30 to 40% lift in proficiency, which means you're hitting quality standards and talk time standards. So how long are we on the phone and are we hitting the bank quality standards? Yes or no? If yes, you're proficient. So we're shortening that time by over 50%. And that is a significant benefit to any institution, but specifically to banks. And also compliance standards are included in that. So banking compliance standards, authentication, making sure that you're talking to the right person, making sure that you say the right disclosure, you say the right verbatim, you do the steps in sequence that are required by law. That's kind of a big deal. So we are able to help people become more proficient in that as well. And there are more customer satisfaction, but a big one is attrition rate as well. Because agents are more proficient, they're more confident, they're doing better in their jobs, they tend to stay longer because people that do better in their roles tend to stay there longer. So that is a lagging indicator of all of these other benefits they're getting from simulation training in Zenerate in our solution. And the final thing I'll say is you can actually consolidate training time. So instead of it taking, let's say, 6 weeks to get people to the production floor, maybe it takes 5 or 4. And that savings is significant. That pays for the tool and then some every single time. But that's not even including all those other KPIs I mentioned, which are the performance KPIs that matter a great deal. So that's a good kind of overview. There are more ways that it benefits, but I think those are some of the most common and probably some of the most desired by banking leadership.
Sounds really good. And what's next in the short term for Zenerate then? Is there anything else in the pipeline that you can tell us about right now?
Yeah, good question. Good question. What am I going to reveal on the podcast today? What I can tell you is we're continuously enhancing our platform based on customer feedback. Where we get the next step from in our product roadmap is customers. This is what we'd like to see. Awesome. We work on that. We roll it out. We introduce that. So some of the more recent enhancements I can tell you is the insights that we are able to provide customers. It used to be a little bit more manual. We used to have to do it a little bit more on our side. We would provide a report for them, but we would have to do a lot of the legwork and pull the data. We could send them raw data, etc. But now they have really beautiful, effective, self-serve dashboards. They can go into the system, find out performance of any individual learner and any in the geo. So country, like I mentioned before, site, all of that cohort in seconds. They can filter, they can do drop downs, they can do all of those things and get that information literally as soon as a learner logs a practice. It's that fast. So that's one of the enhancements that we just rolled out. Also, our solution analyzes live calls. So that's something that a lot of people out in the marketplace don't necessarily know is we can also analyze our current customers' live calls. So after training, they're actually talking to customers. Now we can analyze those according to the same performance standards we were training your people on. So it's a continuation of learning. Then we provide insights from those recorded call analysis and then also targeted performance, roadmap. Hey, here's what you need to do to get better based off of your performance, not only in training, but now after talking to live customers, because as I said before, the learning journey never stops. Banks are constantly rolling out new things, new products, new credit cards, new policies, new ways of doing business. They're also dictated by regulation, by governments, by law, and they have to change in an instant sometimes. We could do that yesterday, now we can't. So we need to implement strict adherence standards, and you can do that using Zenerate's AI coach simulation technology, but also our call analyzer technology for listening and reviewing live calls.
Thank you so much again for joining me, Casey, and for telling us a bit more about what you're up to over at Zenerate. To close out the podcast, we have our now infamous FinTech Gel. So this is where we ask for an industry term, buzzword, or trend that you've seen or heard enough of. We'll then decide whether it deserves a place in the jail or if it's already in there, whether it needs an extended sentence, or of course you can argue to free one of the previously incarcerated terms as well. So Casey, what's your selection for this week?
This is kind of a tough one, but I think I took machine learning as the term. I think it's overused just in general across the marketplace. It's not about the machine. It's about how the machine benefits the human. And so that's the focus. And I'm sure you got that from our talk today, but that's the focus is how can we leverage technology, innovation to make human beings better? Yes, we use machine learning. It's part of the AI models and algorithms, et cetera. But the reality is the focus needs to be on the human being and how can we better leverage technology to help human beings perform better in their jobs and hopefully lead to not only a better customer experience for your financial institution or bank, but also a better life for that individual who is doing everything they can to deliver performance, in their particular job.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things I did want, I mean, you've mentioned briefly at the start as well, saying that people really want that human element in the call agent experience. Given the rate of change that we have in kind of tech in general at the moment, but also AI, do you ever see a point in the future where AI gets so advanced that it could actually start replacing call centers? Or given the kind of like complex issues that banks and other financial services have to deal with, do you think there will always be that need for that human element there? And like I said, do you think people will always want to have that human element there?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. I think when you look at the landscape, there was a push for this, Paul, when technology was introduced over 10 years ago. And they're like, hey, I think we can replace these jobs. They're really expensive. We have so many call center agents, et cetera. What we're finding out, though, is that the technology isn't quite there yet. It's not as good as human beings, period. And that's a problem. That's a barrier that has to be overcome. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but what I can tell you statistically, I'm going to go back to that stat I threw out earlier. 67% of customers today prefer a live agent. Back in 2018, it was 60%. It actually dropped to 50%. And then in 2021, it jumped to 64% and 67. Why would it go backwards, right? We're supposed to be going the other direction. And it's because of what I explained earlier, that the technology that they're throwing out there to force customers to self-serve is not working. It's not friendly. It's not a great experience. They get really frustrated with those bots because, like I mentioned, most people can self-serve today. Most, not all. And so, I mean, like I said, my 13-year-old son can do more with self-serve and technology than I can. And I feel like I'm pretty tech savvy. But he's like, Dad, you don't know how to do that? Come on, And so there's that aspect. But when people call us, because there's a complex issue, and human beings are the ones that are going to be helping with those complex issues. The AI bots are not there yet. And I don't know if we'll ever get there, to be honest with you, Paul. I think humans are always going to need human contact and human service. And I don't think that's ever going to go away, but could it continue to pull some of the low-hanging fruit off the tree? Sure, I think it can. And it's good for business when it's a good experience for the customer. That's the caveat. So I can go in through technology, like I said, and check my bank balance today. I don't know why anybody needs to call to check their bank balance. You have an online app and website. You can do that yourself at any given time. Now you might get you might get booted. You can't log in, but most companies also have, it takes less than 30 seconds to reset your own password. So most companies have mastered that today. That was something that reduced a lot of calls, I'll tell you what, and that was a very good move. But it's a good experience. It only takes me 30 seconds. I can go develop a new password. I get a secret code. It's not a big deal. Some people aren't quite that tech savvy even, and that's okay. But ultimately, there's still going to be a need for humans. However, there is opportunity to make the self-serve experience better.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting stat as well. You said about people instantly starting to use the chatbots and think that they're quite good, and then the novelty starts wearing off and they start turning back towards the human agents again because that's right. They want to actually get their problems solved, right? So,
and do you know what happened, Paul? Not even kidding. Leaders in contact centers, they were not hiring humans for a while because they're like, oh, the bot's taking over, and they forecasted all this call reduction, and then they started getting spikes in call volume because the bots failed. And that was a huge gap that I don't think leadership really understood, given where the technology was at the time. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. Trust me, I'm a big technology fan. I love my innovation. I love the things that make my life better through technology. But also, man, when I need my bank to help me, I'm talking to a human 90% of the time.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's safe to throw machine learning into the jail then at the moment. Usually what I ask once we cast the terms into the jail, is there anything you'd like to replace it with? But I mean, I think this might be more just it's an overused term. We just wanted to see it used more for specifics that it's used for, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. What I would say is AI for bettering human performance is what I would like to see is more common terminology of, hey, how can we make the human experience with AI better? across the board because there's this angst, there's this anxiety. It's going to take our jobs. Again, I mentioned that earlier, but it's true. People get a bit crazy when new technology comes out and they feel threatened. They feel threatened by it. And we need to calm the threat and be able to sell how this is going to help us and how this is going to benefit. And ultimately, when people started using text messaging, I'll give you that example. At first, they were like, why would I ever do that? And now everybody uses text and most prefer it over voice. So just one example of it takes time for adoption of new technology, but also we need people to be educated on what it's being used for and how it's being used and how it can benefit them. And I think that's part of what's missing. Some people like Elon Musk are really, really, really trying to help educate people, but not everybody's on Twitter every day. Not everybody, or X, whatever they're calling it now, not everybody reads the Wall Street Journal. Not everybody is in tune, per se, with what's happening each and every day. So I think it's a long journey, but worth taking.
Well, that's all we have time for this episode. Thanks, of course, to Casey for joining me. As for FinTech Futures, you can find us online at www.fintechfutures.com, on X, the app formerly known as Twitter, at FinTech Futures, and of course on LinkedIn. If you like this podcast and our other episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SoundCloud, or your favorite podcasting service to get notified about future episodes. Thanks as well to Arama for editing this podcast. You can check them out at arama.tv. As always, thank you so much for your support. We'll see you soon for another episode of What the FinTech. But until then, goodbye.
That is free. They're charging you when they rig the tables that you are gaming on, and they're getting every drink. You're paying for 12 drinks, 12 rooms, 24 meals, and you're losing your savings. One thing is this: I don't gamble with my intrinsic ability. I multiply it. I don't gamble because gambling is ungodly. Because you're chancing away what the great creator God Almighty has given to you to be wealthy. You're saying is not enough. I'm a double down. And you're always going to lose. Always going to lose. So I don't gamble. I don't teach our clients to gamble. I teach our clients to be prodigious savers. That's the first step to becoming wealthy. You have to become a prodigious saver first, not a consumer. Not a consumer. So the difference with us is we teach them, and I can show you over 25 years how just making small investments in the precious metals would allow you to retire with real money, and real money has real weight, right?
Right.
And you have real money, and you will have $1 million. How can you have $1 million if they're paper? Dollars, it means silver. What millions of silver do you have? Then you can't be a millionaire if all you have is paper. You have a million debt instruments, a million debt coupons. So we show everyone how to actually gain interest, and that moves your cost per average down, and your holdings up. That's what you want to do. You want your cost per average to go down and your holdings to go up. And believe me, the holdings get heavy. And for those of us, our clients that are here, Dominic shaking, they know what that means. Then you'll be able to read the overall nuances that I say, and it will resonate with you because it's true. So that's what I want to do. I want to get your cost per average down and your whole overall holdings up. Let me give you an example of how important that is. I saw that there was someone here from DeSoto.
DeSoto, Texas, yes.
DeSoto, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So from that individual that's from DeSoto, okay, our overall precious metals company is here in Dallas, Texas, okay? So that person from DeSoto will know exactly what I'm saying. So from that person from DeSoto, they're familiar with the Arlington Entertainment District, where Globe Life Stadium, the old one, the new one, and AT&T Stadium, and the new Lowe's Hotel and everything. They're familiar with that. If you can see it in their chat, they would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
If they say yes, let me know.
Yeah, they know it. They know it where it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. For that person that's there, is that area expanding and growing? And if you were going to buy some real estate there, would it be expensive or would it be cheap? Question for that person.
Okay, yeah, let me get to them.
If you see them.
They said, I'm looking at so many. I lost them. I know what they're saying. I'm going to find them, but they're saying it's going to be expensive.
Right.
It's a growing area.
It's going to be extremely expensive. We just purchased a commercial property where our view is AT&T Stadium. And based off of what we've been doing, it only cost me $87 for an acre and a 10,000 square foot modern building that we're going to be able to build. $87 is my cost per average for what it is. But guess what the sales price was? Oh, it was in the millions. But because we've been doing this for so long, my cost per average was $87. My cost per average for every ounce of gold that we have is negative $373. For every ounce of silver, my overall cost per average is negative $831. Someone said, what? How does that happen? Right. Because you have to learn how that happens. Let me ask y'all something. So Jerry Jones is the owner of the Cowboys. Let me show you how this works. When you're wealthy, you get to publicize the liabilities and privatize the profits. Say that again. When you're wealthy, you get to publicize the liabilities while privatizing the profits. When Jerry Jones built AT&T Stadium, there were taxpayers' revenues that was given to Jerry Jones to build the stadium. And guess what? That paid for the building of the stadium. And guess what he gets to do after the building was complete? He gets to privatize all of the profits. You see how that works? That's because when you're wealthy, you tell the economy what to do. It does not tell you where to be. When you're rich, the economy tells you where to be, how long you're going to be there, what your rate of pay is going to be, and when you can retire and when you can take sick times off. It's a glorified slave because of this. Here's the key. The wage of a king and queen, every king and queen is paid in silver. The wage of a lady and gentleman that works for a king or queen is gold. Every single one of them is paid in gold. And the wage of a slave is debt. Every slave is paid in debt. That's what we show and we teach how you should be using God's promise to make you wealthy to be wealthy. And guess what? Game, set, match. It never fails.
And that's what's so exciting, David, is that I've been able to live that with you through this process and seeing that happen. And then more importantly, my children now are seeing that and understanding that and moving in that same direction and becoming, and they've been, but they're prodigious savers. They're not, they get what they're looking to do. And that is what I love about what we do here at MWR, that we go there. Now, Martina, go back to the back office, because I just want to show everyone something real quickly. So when you're on step one, and you're going to see this training video that you must watch because it's important, and it's David really kind of going down, helping you understand, you know, the money and some of the things he's talking about there. He'll go into that. Once you do that, step two, if you had any questions, because some of you may have questions before you're ready to purchase, all you have to do is click on that Ask the Expert button, and that'll light up after you watch the video. So you see how it's lit up there? Then you ask the expert. and now you can ask him questions, and he'll get back to you through the chat system, and you can get those questions answered. And then because you've watched the video, what you'll see is that step 3, the making a purchase, will come alive, and you can click on that, and you can go on and then purchase your metals. You'll be able to purchase your metals, and you'll be able to start your process of really having real money, converting that there are people's fiat, but converting cash and currency into real money. And so that's the power of it. The messages that come from the Ask the Expert, you will see them in your message center right here. So any questions that you ask, you'll be able to see that right there, and you'll see those answered. So that, I just wanted you to be able to see the simplicity of what the process is once you go in to purchase the metals, but it will be required to you watch that first training. After that, you'll see where you're going to be set up for the advanced trainings, which are critically important for those that are really serious about becoming a ratio player and trying to learn and be able to be in the position that you heard David talk about, where metals are given to you, and that when he purchases or acquires, I should say, because he doesn't have to go out and repurchase anymore. He's not in a position that when he acquires metals, it's almost like they're giving him $831 for every ounce of gold that he acquires. That is mind-blowing, but that is possible for every single person on this line over time. That will happen for us. So that's what's so exciting. What I want to do is see if there's any other questions. Martina, if you have any out there for me, I don't see that. I also want to tell you this, because we had talked about it earlier, but if you are not, let me just see something here. The videos, I do need to let you know this, that the videos in English and Spanish they're currently in production, but this will count as their training, and the purchase link for the Ask the Expert videos will go live. So they'll be up. What now you have to thank our great CEO and founder, Mr. Brian House. He's going to make this segment part of the training. So if you want, and you have been on this platform, you'll be able to go and start purchasing metals. But again, you'll do that. Now, the question is, I have someone that's asking, can you buy metals with crypto?
Great question.
That is a
great question. So what I would prefer that you do is exchange your crypto into cash, and then do it that way. And the reason being is because I'm glad you said the crypto, because one thing is, I want you to think about this. Crypto, what is it? Is crypto what? Currency, right? It's not money. So if you're exchanging your currency for money, that's the proper thing to do. Exchange your currency for money, right? You transfer your currency into money, and then you exchange your money for more money, right? So with us, you have to use currency only because I'm not going to be caught with a depreciating instrument such as crypto, because it is a form of currency, is not a form of money. Here's the problem with it. It has nothing to do with you. It's just that I know currency and I know money, right? Actually, Bitcoin, I got into Bitcoin in 2007, 2008, when you could actually mine it. And I already knew, use that currency to create, and I used the Bitcoin as it went up back then to create the overall ability to make our first major mine purchase. So I exchanged my currency for money. Best thing you do is exchange that, because I don't want the tax situation with it. And not only that, folks, we are going into a wartime environment with Iran, with Russia, and with everyone else. It's admitted. And one of the things that most people don't know, and my clients, they know, Adamo will tell you, I really, really make sure that our clients are safe when they travel abroad as well. So what happens is that when we go into this wartime scenario, guess what's the first thing that's going to go? One of the biggest lies is they told you that cryptocurrency was created by a Japanese gamer. There's no way in the world a Japanese gamer could do that. That was the bankers that created cryptos. It's the bankers that created. And what it is the perfect form of currency. Here's why. You can devalue the purchasing power of it immediately. Here's how. They always say that cryptocurrency is they always say it's a socket to the man system. It's a decentralized platform, right? That's the biggest lie. Here's why it's the biggest lie. Turn off the internet and see how fast you'll be able to access your overall crypto. It's reliant on the overall internet to be working. And when you go into a wartime scenario, guess what happened in Gaza? Guess what's going to happen in the Middle East as the U.S. Starts its overall retaliatory campaign? The first thing that's going to go down is the internet, communications, the telephone lines, the cellular. Guess what? If you got crypto over there, boom, it's gone. One day you're going to come back, it's going to be completely gone. It is the banker's premier form of currency to devalue the overall purchasing power that you are saving in. So no, we don't accept cryptos for payment. Nothing against it. It's a currency. It's just a thing that I understand the difference between currency and money. And one thing I do is this. I don't ever, only thing I keep in my bank account is what I'm willing to lose. Right? Everything else goes. I use my currency for what it should be used for, maintaining my quality of life and my standard of living. Right? I do not save in it. I save in real money. So I hope I answered that question. There's a whole lot more to it. But so, yeah.
That's great. So then that leads to the next question, Sharonda Harris, and that was Ben McCray. Thank you, Ben. Sharonda Harris asked, once you go through the 3 steps and finalize the purchase of their precious metals, how do you continue with the education afterwards? Sharonda, what will happen is you'll see a tab where it says continuing education. You'll register for that class. There'll be a one-time fee for that class, but you will literally have 6 additional trainings that are in that class. And because you're a client, once you go through those 6 additional trainings, you will have ongoing trainings that, David, you pretty much do them at least once a month for sure. But sometimes, depending on what's happening in the world and what's going on in the economy, you do it right then and there. And that's one of the things I love about I've loved about the relationship I have in terms of just me being a client of David's, is that I'm getting real-time information. So if I need to make an adjustment or do something, I can react to it right then because I know what's going on. And he does those. Some of those are more impromptu because something happened today in the world, and then he literally immediately gets everyone together. You'll get an email, and you'll just get on this platform, and he'll talk to you about it. And here's the beautiful thing. When he talks to you about it, if anyone has questions, he answers them all on there. It's amazing, David, just watching you work. And I know it's a passion is what you do. And for your clients, though, it's amazing. So that to me is, again, talking about value. That's so much more valuable because I know all that's going to do is allow me to acquire more and more money, real money, because I now understand the things that are happening, the things that affect currency, and I can be prepared. So, and that's what that does. So, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you want to plug in all the way through. Now, here's William Hancock. He's asking, does it matter if U.S. or versus Canadian silver?
Great question. So, here's the thing. There is no such thing as U.S. silver or Canadian silver. It's just silver. It's God's money. And God's money is universal. So no, it does not matter at all. But we will tell you which form of silver is the best entry for profitability. We will tell you that in our overall continuous education and our relationship through MWR.
All right, all right. Hoping I'm coming in loud and clear. Hope everybody can hear me. So much to do, so little time. Man, my guy, David Wren, who is my precious metal guy, giving you definitely an earful. For those of you that do not understand and you have been in this class for the first time, this is Syntax Trust Mastery class. We talked about everything from crypto. We talked about everything from SaaS. We even gave you a little bit of high level trading at the very beginning of this. And all of this is leading towards a march to financial literacy and awareness. And syntactical trusts are going to be one of the many different vehicles to do a lot of the things that you have heard about. Now, again, for those of you that are members within our small group and organization, we will be offering a direct Q&A following the Syntactical Trust Mastery course training. What I don't like to do, though, is do it with not a lot of people because I want to address everybody, give everybody a chance to get some clarity, talk about implementation strategies, the whole 9 yards. So I will give you guys an opportunity inside the chat. If this is something that you're interested in doing, please allude to that inside the YouTube chat so that way I can send out the link and get everybody prepared for where we're getting ready to go. I want to show you a couple of things, but I want to make sure that everybody really is picking up what's being put down. First up the bat, do you really understand the M3 conveyance versus M2, M1? Do you understand the difference between an M3 conveyance, an M2 conveyance, and an M1? Because M1 is what most folks are used to dealing with when they talk about the money supply. M3 is a lot of these type of things that we're talking about in lieu of, or in, some people say we're talking in code. It's not really we're talking in code, it's just it's a different language that is usually discussed around and with M3 conveyances that isn't associated with M1 conveyances. A colleague of mine said when he attended the prestigious University of Harvard that a world-renowned economist and philanthropist walked into one of their classroom settings, and before he began his lecture, he reached inside of his insert coat jacket and pulled out a money clip. And this was not a normal money clip. This money clip was probably few, we'll say at least 4 or 5 inches thick, and it was filled with what we will call in the conversation, most people have heard of $100 bill. Maybe you've heard of a $1,000 bill. This was a stack of $100,000 bills in a money clip about 4 inches thick. And he held it up. He took one out of the clip. He said, he said, this is money. And a lot of you guys probably won't ever get an opportunity to ever handle this type of money. And this is what we think about this money that you'll never even get a chance to even touch. And he set it on fire. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like your concept of money has been basically tethered to a concept that a lot of individuals truly do not fully grasp. So it is essential that you really get the gist of the information in this asymmetric format. Asymmetric format simply means that in the aspect of commerce is governed together by principles and practices that are symmetrically petitioned. It's held together by asymmetric information. I'll give you an example. In the lending world, lenders are protected in a standard debt obligation because of the asymmetric information that the borrower has. See, the borrower may do a whole bunch of things on the application, but have information that the lender don't have on what they're going to do with the funds. So they have an intention based upon the contract, but they have hidden information that is only known to them. So that's an example of asymmetric information. So by design, a lender, a creditor operating in commerce has more favor than a debtor. So you got to understand that coming in. And a lot of debtors actually live, breathe, and sleep in the world in their own mind that it's the opposite. Everybody has it and they don't. Po pitiful me. They have that victim mentality. And it's because of financial literacy. So, and again, what David Wren is saying about fiat currency versus real money is true. I'm an advocate for decentralized on-chain transactions. That's what we call it. I'm a advocate for on-chain conveyances because even my reluctance to finally embrace it, I've watched things evolve to a point where I don't need a whole lot of convincing to decide to get in line with the natural order of commerce. There's a rule. Capital will flow where capital is rewarded. Capital will flee from where capital is being punished. So in order for a practitioner of commerce to reward capital, they must deploy, they must implement, they must overstand and understand, however you want to say it, the rules of credits and debits. Because individuals who know this get to publicize their liabilities while keeping their profits private. So, for those of you that want to dig into the skinny of implementation strategies, the secrets of RSAI tokenization, the whole 9 yards, drop me a line inside the YouTube chat. Let me know that, Mr. Bay, I want to learn a little bit more, so I'm definitely available for a Q&A. Once I see a certain level of participation in that, I will drop the link inside the Bittrex. But until then, hopefully you're learning something, and hopefully this ain't too far over your head. Remember, if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something. Now, let's dive into this, shall we? Let's see. I got a couple of things I want to go into. Should I do that? Should I do that? Should I really go there? Well, let's see. If I don't do it, then I'll be kicking my own butt. But let's see. Let's try in this arena to, let's see. All right, I'm going to try to see if I can open up a screen here. Bear with me. Bear with me while I open up this screen. All right, here we go. Got the screen open. Let's go to this window. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you some information. I'm going to give you some information from a book that I believe you probably will, if you know what the book is entitled, you can ask for it by name and I can provide you what it will cost to get your hands on it. It's actually written by Benjamin D. Summers. It's called The Shadow Banker's Secrets. The Shadow Banker's Secrets. Investment Banking for Alternatives. That's what it's called. And we're going to come to this section in this book that deals with deciphering the monetary policy. Bear with me while I bring this up. Remember, if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something. Deciphering money policy. The monetary policy, excuse me. Monetary policy, deciphering the monetary policy and its effects on the markets can also seem like it seems like an impossibly complex and, if not, opaque dynamic. The market obviously responds in most often its seamlessly positive manner to the actions taken by the Federal Reserve System and the statements by its chairman, but how, why, and what are the less obvious effects of centralized monetary system? Money is a market-chosen commodity that serves as a recognizable, divisible, and portable medium of exchange and store of value. Historically, gold and silver have served this function. The term dollar is cited in the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1, 7th Amendment, specifically defines under the Coinage Act of 1792, it states to contain 371 grains and 4/16 parts of grain of pure or 416 grains of standard silver, is a reference to the Spanish milled dollar, a silver coin. The authors of the United States Constitution had learned the dangers of issuing unchecked fiat currency firsthand when the Congressional Congress issued its own paper currency, the infamous Continental, as allowed under the Articles of Confederation. The result was economic chaos. In one of the only instances in world history when the politicians who created an egregious problem recognized their mistake and corrected it. The Continental Congress later repaired to Philadelphia, drafting the United States Constitution to explicitly maintain gold and silver as a tender in payment of debts. And this is under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. Centuries of pressure to fund war and appease the banking cartel have ultimately reversed this act of wisdom. The Federal Reserve and systematically important banks, the Federal Reserve, meaning the Feds, the central banking system of the United States, the Fed said to be independent within government in that its monetary policy decisions do not have to be approved by the president or anyone else in the executive and legislative branches of government. The Fed has both private and public aspects. There are 12 Federal Reserve banks that are owned by their respective member banks, while the Board of Governors, which is a federal agency in and of itself, is appointed by the President of the United States. It is worth noting that other than the 6% divided paid to the Fed shareholders, i.e. its member banks, the profits of the Feds are returned to the U.S. Treasury, and the member banks do not excuse the proprietary control. The member banks do not excuse the private banks. The member banks do not exercise the proprietary control traditionally associated with the concept of ownership. They do not exercise the proprietary control traditionally associated with concept of ownership beyond statutory dividend. So how they get away with doing what they do is they call it a statutory dividend. Member banks do, however, elect 6 and 9 directors for their regional Federal Reserve Bank Board. And each Federal Reserve Bank Board of Directors appoints its bank president. Ownership in the 12 Federal Reserve banks is not public record. But national banks must be members, while state chartered banks may become members by meeting certain requirements. The Fed was established via the Federal Reserve Act, which was passed by Congress and signed into law by one President Woodrow Wilson on December 23, 1933. The passage of this act granted the Fed the exclusive right to issue United States national currency otherwise known as Federal Reserve notes, at the discretion of its Board of Governors, with the 5 regional Fed bank presidents making up Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC. Federal Reserve notes or dollars were redeemable in gold until when? Until the Emergency Banking Act of 1933, which removed that obligation. Federal Reserve notes from that point on were redeemable only for other Federal Reserve notes, effectively making changes. On April 5th, 1933, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, criminalizing the possession of monetary gold in quantities exceeding $100. All citizens and businesses were required to deliver their gold to the Fed in exchange for $20.67 per ounce. The price of gold was then raised by the Treasury to $35 per ounce. Although citizens could not possess gold, the federal government continued to maintain a stable international gold price until 1968, when it rose to $42.22. Before the gold window was closed altogether by President Richard Nixon in 1971, this move led to the great inflation of the 1970s. The limitation on private ownership of gold in the United States was repealed in 1974 under President Gerald Ford. In 1977, Congress amended the Federal Reserve Act, stating the monetary policy objectives of the Federal Reserve is its dual mandate. Listen to this. The Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System and the Federal Open Market Committee shall maintain long-run growth of the monetary and credit aggregates, and they commensurate with the economy's so long runs potential to increase production, so as to promote effectively the goals of the maximum employment, stable prices, and moderate long-term interest rates. By January 1980, gold had risen to $850 per ounce. Under the federal chairman Paul Volcker, to the FOMC, until the FOMC raised the federal fund rate, which is the interest rates banks charge each other for loans from their reserve balances, with the Fed to 20% on June 1980, successfully stabilizing the dollar. How does the Fed accomplish its dual mandate? The Fed has several tools at its disposal to set the interest rate and ultimately control the money supply. They include establishing reserve requirements, setting the target federal fund rates, which include the use of reserve repos and paying interest on reserves, or adjusting the discount rate, which is what banks pay to borrow directly from the Fed in an emergency, and open market operations, what they call OMO. The most commonly used tool of the Fed is open market operations. Two examples of open market operations are quantitative easing, what they call QE, and Operation Twist. In the last rendition of Operation Twist, which was done on 2011 to 2012, the Fed affected the yield curve of the United States Treasury security by simultaneously selling short-term debt and buying long-term debt via ostensibly in the private market of primary dealers. The Fed's balance sheet remained unchanged. And like we say in business, the beat goes on. This particular piece of financial literature is chock full of information about the infamous T-notes, T-bonds, T-bills, and the infamous TIPSs. You must understand that in order for you to know where you're going, you got to know where you came from. Again, the Shadow Banker's Secrets is available for those of you that want to understand what one must do to preserve the integrity of one's estate. Hopefully this information was insightful, impactful. I would love to engage with you more, but again, like my grandmother said, you can't force it. You just got to, you build it, they'll come. Hope you guys have learned something. And with that, I'm going to say peace and love, family. Peace and love.